So here's the deal. They're labeled. They know who they are. You don't know who they are, except I did one very clever thing. At each of your tables, we gave you a little sheet of paper. It is the Audubon field guide to the panel discussion at the CTO, or at our event today. So if they're seated exactly as they are. So if we've got here, Jim Bugnato, Greg Dixon, Rich Rogers, and Jim Pepin. And by the way, they told me all of them said they would rather be doing something else than this today. So a round of applause for them to show up and do this thing. And here it is. We're talking about the future technology. By the way, we got some of your questions. We'll use some of those as well. But part of this is just to kind of talk about what these guys see as the future. Let me do a little way of introduction here. And I guess I'll start, I don't know if it makes sense. I'll start with Jim. I just had to pick one end and work my way in. So let's start with Jim Pepin. Jim is with Clemson University. But Jim, you have had an amazing career up to this point. So I wonder if you could just lean into the mic, talk 20, 30 seconds about how cool you are.
Yeah, that works. I've been doing this since probably 1967, 1968. I started at the University of Southern California in Los Angeles, helped run the computing systems and engineering. We put those systems on the ARPANET as one of the first half a dozen places that went on the ARPANET. I participated in some of the network working groups for things like FTP and such like that. Ran engineering computing, ran campus computing. We started a regional network with a person named John Postel from Information Sciences Institute in Los Angeles, who was one of the original ARPA people. So we had one of the first regional ISPs in the country in the mid-'80s that NSF funded. That ISP still exists. Built one of the first campus networks at USC in the early '80s. Like I said, ran campus computing, came here 5.5 years ago to help Clemson do things because of the provost and my boss, who's the CIO. I thought that there was very interesting things going on at Clemson. Started high performance computing here, some regional networking things. My job basically at Clemson isn't really, no one works for me except for one person in the back of the room who does some of the regional networking, but everybody else either listens to me or dies. My job is to be a pest. And I do that very well. So
awesome.
Right now we're into things like high performance computing, things with other universities, doing things to make what we're doing at Clemson relevant at the national and international level.
Awesome, thank you. And Jim, by the way, is one of two of our panel who are repeat offenders, and that is they've had a chance to sit here and talk to the GSATC before. So welcome back. Thank you for coming back. Rich, VP of Information Services, CIO of Greenville Hospital System. Sounds like a pretty easy gig, right?
It's a layup, absolutely. Well, good afternoon, and thank you for the invitation to be here. I'm a relative newcomer to the Greenville area. I've been here for almost 5 months, end of this month. My background is I started with IBM back in '83 in New York. My first job at IBM was in the mailroom in corporate headquarters, and I moved into a marketing role and ended up working in a healthcare territory and had a lot of healthcare customers in the Midwest, and moved into a healthcare practice, and then eventually went to work for one of my customers, Lakeland Regional Health System, as their VP of IS in Michigan back in the early '90s. Then moved on to another emerging health system as our industry was going through consolidation down in Florida. Health First, a 4-hospital system, and health insurance company, physician practice, and so forth. I spent 16.5 years down in Florida, and then just recently joined GHS here 5 months ago. So that's primarily my background, and once again, thanks for being here.
Awesome. Hey, Rich, your boss isn't here, right?
I don't think so.
Awesome. So how's the gig so far?
It's a great town, a great area, and healthcare has its challenges. So there's quite a bit of activity ongoing, and just trying to keep up is a challenge. But
it's nice to know you're needed, isn't it?
Yeah, there you go.
Very good. Super. Welcome and thank you. Greg Dixon, you've been here before, but you get to play around with some cool toys as the CTO of ScanSource. But probably most people know this is the only job you've ever had, right?
To play around with cool toys? Yeah,
Yeah.
sure. I mean, I'm a geek at heart, so.
Pull that mic into you.
Wow, so I go way back too, to some old IBM days and mainframe days, and but have been able to work I tell people I've worked my way down in the computer industry from, you know, systems the size of this room now to systems that you carry around in your pocket. So I've had the opportunity to work 35 years in the upstate here, and with all the just about every IT customer that you can think of. So all the while as a computer field engineer, and so boy, if there's a geek up here, I'm it. I'm it, and proud to be so. 20 years ago, had the opportunity to connect up with some guys that I knew and start a little company here in ScanSource, 6 of us here in Greenville called ScanSource, and so we just celebrated our 20th anniversary here in downtown Greenville this past week, a big celebration and our partner conference, and so we've been able to grow that substantially. I'm the Chief Technology Officer, but not the CIO. Someone at my table says there's only one letter difference. That's not even a whole letter difference, but it is different, and that I have the opportunity to pay attention to the technology that we sell. We're a technology distributor, and if you're not aware of what that is, we're the classic middleman between the manufacturer and the reseller. We never sell to end users any product, and some of our vendors are folks like Motorola and Avaya and Polycom and you name it, and so big technology vendors, and so we're the technology distributor in that space, and have become I guess pretty good at what we do. We seem to continue to grow, and we're in Europe and Latin America now as well. So really enjoyed it, and I'm really privileged to work for this company. I'm gonna tell you, ScanSource is an exceptional little company.
Awesome. Welcome, and thank you for coming back. Jim Bugnato, for charter business, I mean, you actually get to invent tomorrow for some things, it sounds like.
Yeah, actually, I do have that opportunity. Although one thing I've noticed is sitting on this panel, I'm going to have to ask for a promotion. There's a lot of a lot of power and experience on this panel, and I'm privileged to be part of it. Thanks for inviting me. From my perspective, with charter business, and I've been there for about 3 years now. I've got kind of a checkered past from before that, but in my current activity and current role, what I'm really focused on is trying to take all of these wonderful technologies that are available via primarily IP and find a way to deliver voice communication services to our customer set in a way that they want to receive those. And what I mean by that is we put together a wide portfolio and a package of service offerings that will match to whatever a customer particularly needs. So from that regard, I guess I get a chance to invent the future, but really it's a near-term future in terms of product development and delivery to our customer set.
Wonderful, and welcome. Thank you all. So let me start with you, Jim, since you got the mic right in front of you. I mean, so part of what you're doing at Charter is creating new products there, right? Or helping devise new products. So it's just you, me, and a couple of hundred of our close friends. What's next?
What's next?
And by the way, don't tell us anything you'd have to kill us for. I have small kids.
Understood. Yeah. So again, focusing on Charter as a service provider, we're when we say what's next for us is really kind of evolving as a more kind of full service telecommunications provider and offering a wide portfolio of products to voice customers that are out there in the business space. From a what's next as to what we see in terms of things that are driving our decisions around which products we go to develop, I guess there's a couple key things in my mind that come to mind. One is very much, and while the technology already is there, we're looking for ways to simplify and ease customers into this. And a couple key examples would be the mobile workforce of today, mobile and remote workforce. Some of the key product decisions that we're making that will influence our product roadmap for the next 18 to 24 months are really driven by the fact that we need to find a way as a service provider to deliver easy solutions for small and mid-sized business customers to be able to take advantage of the technology that we have to integrate their mobile and their kind of fixed-based life in their businesses, Secondarily, we also feel that there's a great opportunity to extend that a little bit further, to be able to drive towards a greater unified communications environment for primarily small to mid-sized businesses. I know that a lot of large enterprises have the capabilities internally to deliver that for themselves. But in many cases with small to mid-sized enterprises, we find that they're in need of some help and guidance, and that's primarily what Charter is focused on over the next 12 to 18 months with regard to our voice services portfolio.
Awesome, thank you. Rich, these are the guys essentially providing the pipe and the services, stuff outside of your organization. Are they keeping up with you? I mean, is the industry giving you what you need? If you use that one.
Yes, I think the challenge that we have in healthcare is there's several trends going on. One, as a result of the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act back in, I guess it was 2009, there was federal incentive for hospitals and physicians to implement electronic medical record systems and penalties if they did not in a certain time frame. So there's been a real push for physician offices and hospitals to implement clinical systems, electronic medical records, which is not the easiest thing to implement. And there was a reason that healthcare was 10 years behind the rest other industries in automation. So we're all going through that process right now. And the other trend, and as a result of the healthcare reform efforts in legislation, is you're seeing a consolidation, where you're seeing a lot of physicians are now becoming employees of health systems, and as a result, hospital systems now have hundreds of physicians and practices and EMR systems that are all part of the same organization. So that creates challenges on your infrastructure, availability. What do you do with all these phone systems? Do we standardize? Can we afford to standardize? Network management. The EMR systems and electronic records, they need to be highly available. So you've got disaster recovery and business continuity challenges with that as well. So we're all faced with that, and I think the technology is there. It's us having the resources and making sure we choose the right partners to help us implement fast enough to keep up with the change that we're seeing now. It's an industry that traditionally moves slow, and all of a sudden we're forced to move a lot more rapidly than we have in the past. And at the same time, there's not a ton of dollars to do this. There continues to be pressure on our margins because the pie is shrinking, because reimbursement and how we get paid through Medicare, Medicaid, and government programs continues to decline. There's pressure on businesses to reduce their healthcare costs. They can't keep up with the inflation that they're seeing in expenses for medical benefits to their employees. So we feel a real pressure to reduce expenses as well. So we're going through that challenge right now. And we're seeing a change in just our business model, where traditionally we would get paid for treating a patient with an illness, and that we would treat them and then issue a bill and get paid, reimbursed for it. But the model is now shifting towards where we're going to be assigned a population. We're going to go at risk for a population of patients, whether it be Medicaid patients or an employer and so forth. And our incentive is going to be to keep those people well and out of our facilities. It's a complete reversal. So there's all kinds of technology challenges with that. Number one, we need to do a better job of managing those patients, understand what their medical history is, identify those patients that have disease, that are high risk, and make sure we assign our caregivers or care managers to manage those patients and implement tools like telemedicine tools, make sure they're taking their medications and so forth. So it's a complete reversal. And it requires that we have tools like data warehouses, business intelligence, predictive modeling type of tools and so forth. And most health systems do not have those kind of skills and resources or those tools in place. So that's a challenge for us to build that infrastructure that we're going to need for that new model, while at the same time we're implementing electronic medical record basic transaction systems, which is a challenge in itself. So those are some of the things that are facing us, and certainly we feel that at GHS, because we're going through the same things that other healthcare systems throughout the United States are as well. So I don't know if that answered your question.
I see it for what you're doing, right? I see a lot of sort of competing pressures, right? And one is, healthcare is competitive, And therefore, the question is, how can we get costs down and deliver stronger services? I mean, that has to be quite a bit of what you're spending your days doing, is trying to figure out how to change the system as a whole, because it's not one little piece.
Right, and there's a lot of duplication, a lot of unnecessary care. We do things just to avoid, just to try to take any risk out. And so just any opportunity we have to use technology to improve processes are certainly something that's going to rank high on the list of projects that we're going to take on. I think the technology is there. I mean, one of the things that we see is in order for our physicians to adopt some of the clinical systems we're installing, the basic workstation is not something that lends itself well to physician workflow. So mobile devices are certainly an area that we spend a lot of time with in finding the right mobile device with the right form factor for our docs. The iPad seems to be very popular with the docs, and there's a whole lot of other challenges associated with supporting thousands of those type of devices in our environment, and also being able to securely secure those devices and the information, because there's certainly a lot of legislation that requires that we protect patient information and so forth. So we have that on top of it as well.
One more for you while I've got you here.
All right.
Lots of pressure, like I said, from the outside. We see governmental pressure. You're talking about, the Affordable Care Act, all kinds of things coming down the road. Is IT in healthcare still a good gig? Or would you rather be doing something else right now?
It's an exciting time. It really is. It's trying to manage so many things simultaneously. And like I was saying, one of the things is we're not going to be able to do it all ourselves with our employed group. So it's real important that we are actively working with partners that understand our industry and can deliver some of the solutions, because we can't do it all ourselves. We can't afford to do it all ourselves. So yeah, I think it is a good gig, and I think it's a good industry to be supporting from the vendor side as well.
Super, thank you. Jim, that kind of brings me to you. Rich talks about devices, iPads, et cetera. You're at Clemson University. You've got people bringing their own devices and connecting to your network every which way. Some of them, I mean, I don't know how does that impact what you're doing? What do you see?
It's a good thing. Sitting up here, though, I feel like I'm sort of at a debate, and he's like Wolf Blitzer, and I'm not supposed to answer this question. I'm supposed to answer another one.
Ask whatever question you like. Answer it. I'm in.
No, the bring your own device thing, you're going back to the philosophies of how I believe a network should work, and this is something that's very religious to me. I don't think that networks are built to be anti-connectivity devices. I think they're built to be something that we actually use every day for everything we do. And if I need to put security at something, I put security at the thing, not at the network. The network's not your mother. So I don't see this as a problem at all. We have, right now, in our NOC, I can look at it, but any one point in time, we have 16 to 20,000 mobile devices connected to our network. I think that's the right number, but it's some large number. We move over 2 gigabytes of data a second. This from the mobile, it's up to that on our mobile network and more from our normal network. So that's not an issue at all. I think that's a very good thing. It's disruptive change. It's what's happening. This iPad I have sitting here, we sat down in Monterey in 1970 talking about connecting all of the supercomputers in the country together at the time. This iPad is more than all of those computers combined in 1970, more than all of them combined. And what we're talking about is things doubling every 12 to 18 months. If you think about storage, you think about computing, those are doubling every 12 to 18 months. That fundamentally changes the kinds of things that we can do. We can have a network of things and have a cloud, which I hate the word. I start doing Joni Mitchell songs when we talk about clouds. But
I know who that is.
So you have to be old enough. But clouds are really the network of things that we're trying to build, and the interconnection. We have to get away in our minds from building these castles and forts and moats of networks and build the castles and forts and moats around the HIPAA data or around whatever we're doing. We just had a workshop last 2 days at Clemson where we had people from Harvard, from Stanford, from University of Southern California, 10 universities in Clemson, talking about how, as universities, we can take what we call cyber infrastructure. It's a wonderful new buzzword. It's really the high performance computing, or the things we do for scholarship and science. How we can take those resources and share them with each other in very unique ways, where you can have substrates of services. If there's a set of people at Harvard and Stanford and Clemson that are all doing the same kind of research, how do we build a friction-free network to connect them together and allow them to work together? Because science today, or engineering today, isn't a solitary sport, it's a team sport. And we're talking now with our partners. We have partnerships with Charter, Spirit, SCANA, a whole bunch of other people to enable these kinds of networks. How do we take those partnerships, build a 100 gigabit network that this ARA grant is funding for us? We will have a 100 gigabit per second network in place. It's partly in place now. We will be connected to it in the next few months, and so will these other universities. How do we take that network, use next generation technologies, not just your mother and father's TCP/IP or layer 3 networks that we all build, the Charter's building today? How do we take the next generation of protocols and use those to build these sciences? How do we do disruptive change? So I didn't answer your question.
Perfect. It was awesome. All I wanted you to do was talk, and you did that beautifully, right? I mean, that is the right stuff. That's the stuff. And the thing is, you're bringing a unique point of view, I think, for this in one way. And that, a lot of folks concerned about security. I mean, most folks, when they bring up the BYOD, that bring your own device platform, they're worried about what it brings to them. You're saying,
I think exactly the opposite.
You're on the other side of that equation.
Right. It's called free love networks. And
yeah, that's okay. Do it.
And again, the security, we've really, the network was, as we built it in the late 60s, early 70s, was a network that at end to end. It wasn't point to point. It was not, there's a castle and a moat that was this university or this army base or this whatever. The castle and the moat are the systems themselves, not the network. And I think what's happened is a lot of what we've done has been hijacked by other interests. But this is, again, it's a religion thing.
You seem like the kind of guy that says, I ought to be wearing a raincoat. I shouldn't be covering every walkway that I might go down, right?
Yeah. You should wear a raincoat, or be like the sheriff of Spartanburg County, carry your own gun, whatever.
Yeah. Protect yourself. I like that.
Who pays for the network?
So, Fred asked a question, by the way, that came out of it. Don't do that again, Fred. But he's asked a question there that I think it was something we got a lot of when we asked folks about it, and that is, what about this high-speed connections for cities? I mean, is that a city?
I'm now speaking as Jim Pepin. I absolutely believe that's the future of our country. We have to be something other than gaining on Ghana. We have to build these networks, because if I was 5 years ago, I was in a hotel in Singapore. I had higher speed network connection there than any place I had been in the United States. And that's because they have built fiber, they have built out networks that go to wherever. I have a connection from Charter that's 80 megabits. That's fantastic. But if I was in South Korea, it would be a gigabit. And if you go to a lot of the places in states like South Carolina or other rural states, you're lucky to get your wireless at a megabit. So we have to build out somehow, and forget whether it's the incumbents, whether it's us, whether it's whoever, we have to find a way to do that, or we won't be competitive. What will happen is there will be networks that are high performance in New York City, Los Angeles, San Francisco, Seattle, Chicago, and what happens to the rest of the country? Yeah. But again, this is me speaking, not...
So I want to follow on with just one question. Who pays for that?
I think that's a common good. To me, that is something like a road. If we had, using the analogy to the railroads, if the railroads were a monopoly, we wouldn't have public roads today. Right. So we have to find a way to use those roads. Now, there's all sorts of reasons why and things that make that very hard, but I think we have to all get together and understand how to build those fiber infrastructures. Whether it's Charter doing it, AT&T doing it, Spirit, SCANA, whoever. We started out in Los Angeles needing fiber between our universities. We went to the Department of Water and Power and we worked with them to do it. We then did things with layer 3. We then did things with Quest, now the Slinky company, whatever, I can't remember their name. CenturyLink, the Slinky company. Those are the kinds of things you have to do. You have to find a way to build those partnerships. Now, at a university, what we do is very different than what Greenville Hospital does at some level. But what we're doing today is what they will be doing in 10 years or 15 years. When you start thinking about a Da Vinci robot and a visualization center where there's a surgeon doing something with a surgeon somewhere else, they're going to need a 10 gigabit network in a few years to do that super high def television, to make that really practical. Because if you don't see the little thing down there in the corner when you're cutting into someone, that's probably a bad thing.
I'm with you on that. Thank you. Greg, I see high-speed networks. I mean, we're talking about some really powerful stuff down the pike. But you're getting to work with a lot of devices that are at the end of those networks, you know, whether it's scanning, et cetera. I mean, where do you see this headed? I mean, how does that end of the network shape the future of technology?
Well, we're in a, as a distributor, you know, we play in our particular spaces, and there are other distributors in the office, in the office today, y'all used to be in the office, but in the building today. And you know, we represent different parts of that network, and we've got the wide area sitting here, right, and we've got the local area that's all, you know, competing to keep up with all that. But and there's been a lot of change. Boy, the cloud is really causing a lot of nervousness and disruption in the infrastructure in a lot of businesses. Ultimately, the end device, the device that sits on your desk, the device that you carry around in your pocket, is where the person interfaces with all this technology. And so we spend a lot of time and effort focusing our energies on those devices. A lot of our, again, we're a distributor, so we sell only to the reseller community, technology, value-added resellers, and so we're constantly trying to help them make sure that they understand that that's still where the value is. It's out where the person is. And so there's a lot of change going on in the infrastructure, in the back room, and in the wide area infrastructure as well. You know, and none of that's going to change. That we're going to continue to evolve. I don't think the cloud's a revolution. It's really more of an evolution. And so, again, with some historical perspective, you see how those things have come about and why we are where we are. But if you've been around a little while and you've been able to see the wide area network progress over time, thank you, Charter, you're right. And so you can see that people have come to trust the network, so it's more persistent than it used to be, ever was. It's broader than it ever was. We have broadband everywhere, and then ultimately something called virtualization, which, you know, was the most recent of those things that has really, I think, put us in a position where all of our technologies are evolving so fast. I was talking to somebody in the lunch line here, Allison, a little while ago about you know, the way the evolution of things over the last 10 years. If you look just over the past 5 years, it looks like the past 10 years. It just really, things are really starting to accelerate. And so as a result of all that, we're making sure that the end device and the technologies around those end devices are prevalent. And, you know, if you've been in the phone business, we talked about the last mile, you know, and that last mile was where a lot of the bandwidth choke points were, but I really think it's the last 100 meters to a lot of cases. And so that last 100 meters down to your iPad device, down to the local device that you're holding in your hand, or down to that you know, rugged mobile data terminal that they're holding out in the warehouse someplace, or whatever that terminal, whatever that end device might be, is really coming along. And so we're seeing some of the infrastructure pieces starting to respond to that. And if you follow any of the sort of, you know, I proposed this past week that we stop calling it Wi-Fi, by the way. I think Wi-Fi was a marketing term that we used to demystify wireless, and that I think we ought to remystify it, to be honest with you. We ought to add some value back to that thing, and we ought to create some mystery back there, because there really is still a lot of undiscovered country that you have to go to there. And so we've seen 802.11, you know, A and B, and G, and then N. Probably that's where most of us are now. But by this time next year, there'll be a gigabit standard called AC that you'll see, and one called AD. And so that last 100 meters of infrastructure is really competing, and it's working hard. And I'll tell you what's driving it. Two things. the crazy amount of power that's in the end device, okay? Back to Jim's point about his iPad and the power of that device. And so the power, those are power-hungry devices, power meaning what they're capable of doing, but also just the sheer number of them. I mean, the sheer number of them. And so go back to BYOD, I was astounded by what you said, 18,000 devices and I guess those are student devices, right? Most
Or
of the
faculty or
yeah,
whoever.
and most of them probably brought from home, right?
Oh, they're all brought from home.
Yeah, all brought from home. So BYOD, you know, if you haven't heard that term, you should just Google it right quick and find out what it's about. But it really is. It's probably the biggest. I don't want to say the stress point, but it's a pretty big stress point for a lot of IT departments in the United States today. And so a lot of the people, our vendors who are responsible for that last 100 meters, are really working hard, not just to provide appropriate bandwidth to those devices, but also appropriate security to those devices. I mean, so I come into my business using my device, and I'm able to store a company critical spreadsheet out to my Dropbox, which is now in the cloud. And now that Dropbox, I have access to those tools from my mobile device, my mobile phone, and I leave it in the hotel room. You know, and so all of a sudden, IT security is really, really struggling to keep up with some of these things. And so that last 100 meters is working hard to keep up. I think we see a lot of innovation coming along from these wireless Ethernet providers. And so again, end device. You asked me about end devices. They're proliferating and will always be there. And I think we ought to keep in mind that's the end device that drives the network, not the other way around.
Let me ask you one question about that. And, you know, Jim says, I hate the word cloud, but you're selling to guys who are clearly being impacted by the cloud, right? I mean, that is either going to become part of their business or disrupt their business. And I wonder which and where and what do you see that? Is it a wave to ride, or is it change what they do?
Yes.
Thank you.
So
That's
cloud.
why I hate the word cloud.
Yeah.
I know, and I do too. And I've spent the last 2 years talking about nothing else. And so to our reseller group, because it's a disruptive thing to a channel, a person who's involved in the channel. And remember, that's a word you may not get, but manufacturer to distributor to reseller to end user, right? And that's a technology channel. And most of the technology that's implemented in small to medium sized to large business today, that's where it comes from. It comes through that channel. And so don't ever, it may be invisible, and these channel partners may be invisible, but don't take them for granted. And so cloud, though, on the other hand, is not a channel friendly approach, meaning that the cloud provider can go directly to the cloud consumer without the distributor being involved, without the reseller being involved. And so what we've been busy doing, we in the distribution business and in the reseller business have been busy understanding the evolution of the cloud and also understanding where we can insert ourselves to add real value. And it's not just to go in and say, well, we're here, like it or not, but to really add value there. And so, you know, a lot of businesses, you know, still not quite sure what the cloud might mean to them. And so we're starting off with an education program and helping companies understand, you know, where the cloud might impact you, where it might impact you the easiest, where might you actually get an ROI on the cloud, what are the dangers, the risks that are involved in the cloud. And so, as I said before, as bandwidth and confidence in the network and virtualization all sort of hit at once, and we have this convergence of roads that's caused this place that we are right this minute and have been for, I'm going to say, 3 years. And people say, well, why am I all of a sudden hearing about the cloud? Well, I mean, it's been around a long time. It really has. It's not something new. And I ask people in my audiences, you know, who in there are cloud users? And I get a few hands. And I said, don't anybody have a Gmail account on me, for heaven's sakes? And so people realize that it probably is something more ubiquitous than we give it credit for. But so the cloud is a bit of a challenge for the channel to embrace and understand and participate in if you look at it from a traditional standpoint.
Sure. Jim, let me run this to you for a second. I mean, these guys say, well, I don't like the word cloud. It might mean too many things to too many people. But you know, as a guy who uses technology, this has felt pretty good, the ability for me to get at services I might not have been able to have before, because some cloud provider, you know, is essentially, you know, instead of selling me liquor by the drink, he's selling me a phone system by the call, almost. I mean, it has really sort of taken it down and created an opportunity for me as a technology consumer have access to things I didn't have before. I mean, there's no reversing that train, right? That cat is out of the bag.
Well, yeah, I guess a couple thoughts on that, particularly as you brought up phone. I guess to echo Greg's kind of comments around the channel and how products kind of get to the end consumer. I think any cloud provider of a service would look to, in some cases, a channel to be able to help customers. You know, the ultimate goal, I think, of every salesperson should be, I mean, obviously this isn't necessarily the case, but everyone who wants to sell something to somebody should be selling it to them for the right reason, right? It fits that customer's need and fits that customer's model. So, you know, the cat may be out of the bag, but it doesn't mean that everybody wants that cat, right? Because in some cases, an intelligent discussion through either a value-added reseller or a channel partner or someone like that at the front end with the end customer, they're going to discover that, well, you know, the right thing for them is to go with a physical infrastructure piece of hardware at their premises to run that particular application for their business. Now, in other cases, they may find that a cloud solution is the right answer. I know there's a lot of drama and a lot of noise and a lot of activity around kind of the quote cloud-based services, but the way I look at it individually, and I believe Charter kind of holistically looks at it, is we want to put the right solution in front of an end user for their particular needs. And that may be a cloud solution. That may be the right best solution for them based upon the circumstances of what they need. But in some cases, it may not be. So it's not kind of the be-all and end-all, at least in my view. The cat is out of the bag. It's happening. People are aware of it, and it's the right fit for a lot of folks, but it's not necessarily the right fit for everybody.
Jim says it's not the right fit for everybody, Rich, but I want access to my stuff. I want to know what you know about me. Am I going to be able to get there? Am I going to be able to get to my health information that you and I should be sharing?
Yeah, I think that's a clear trend. I think, and part of the legislation that our government has passed, it really they want our citizens to take control of their own health care and be engaged. So that's one of our challenges. How do we engage our patients? And so you start to see things like personal health records and where we're sharing, you know, certain clinical information and patients are actively engaged in their own health care and they can identify, you know, where's the low cost place for me to go to have this test, that procedure, and so forth. So yes, I think that's certainly the trend that we're going to see over time. You know, in terms of cloud computing, I just crack up. I hear this all the time because I had a board member the other day just say, you know, how come we're not investing in the cloud? Well, what does that mean? And you know, really, they don't know. I mean, there's a lot of misnomer about that. And you know, from our standpoint, we'll look for healthcare is very complex. So we have hundreds of systems. And you know, we have a data center where we need to support a number of those. But you know, as we look for a new system, if it can be delivered through the cloud or a remote hosted system, I'm all for it. Where I don't have to maintain it, do the upgrades, manage the data, the storage, and so forth. So we're very supportive of moving that technology. But unfortunately, we're in a situation where we have so many different types of applications that we need to support. We can't totally get there. It will be a long time before we get there. But
sure. All right, Jim, give us a new word. You don't like cloud. What is it? What are we going to call it?
I just look at this as a data tsunami. As we start to generate...
You know that's hard to spell, though, right?
TS something or other.
Yeah, that's exactly the problem.
So what we really have is an explosion in data. And the cloud, to me, is a democratization of access. It means that you can build things that you want, and it doesn't have to be on Google or Amazon or something else. The democratization is built around the kind of networks we build, and then that enables there to be cloud providers out there. So in some sense, Clemson is a cloud provider. We work with other universities and provide services. Now, maybe they're virtualized, maybe they're not, but this is all what goes around comes around. We did this stuff in the 70s on mainframes and built time-sharing systems and actually had operating system development that wasn't stifled by Microsoft. So we used to have things that we built to do these things, and we're just coming back to it. And we're coming back to it because we can build very, very high volume networks. We can build massive data, and we can build massive compute around these very simplified commodity parts. To me, that's the cloud. So I just don't have a problem with it. It is the wrong word for what we're doing. It's the democratization. Now, there's a lot of threats to that democratization at corporate boundaries, at governmental boundaries between countries. I want YouTube turned off in Egypt, or I want Twitter turned off in this country, or I want this, and then you start taking that down. Well, maybe you should turn it off in South Carolina because you're offending someone, or maybe you turn it off in California because that offended someone else. So we have to be really careful to understand what we mean by a cloud, and and the democratization is it. And the question is the world ready for that democratization?
I think it's a great place for us to leave. Now, clearly you've got the idea. I could sit and talk to these guys all day, but we're out of time. So I'm going to ask the folks who are going to help us with the door prizes to bring those stuff up, and I'm going to finish with a final question for each of you. It's the same question, and it came up multiple times when folks were asking, when I asked them, what question do you have for the panelists? And it was, are you hiring?
Clemson's always hiring. We have 4,000 new people every year, except they hire us.
Yes.
No, we have technology in the university community. I can just talk about Clemson and the university community. If you are a person with clue, we hire you. There's a person somewhere in the room. George, where are you? So we hired him. He was a student. We just hired him, what, 4 or 5 months ago? Year ago now.
He says it seems a lot longer, but yeah.
So yes, we hire people. We run the state Medicaid system. We have people who do that. So Clemson hires people. Universities in general hire people because we have this disruptive construction of things we do.
Sure. Cool. Rich?
Well, limited hiring. I wish we have demand to hire quite a few more folks, but unfortunately we can afford a limited number, but specific skills, clinical backgrounds that have IT backgrounds are in demand. Security skills also are in demand as well. But yeah, we are doing a little bit of hiring.
Awesome. Greg, where are you guys in the world? Is it level, headed down, headed up? What do you need?
No, so I get to speak to all the new hires as they come into ScanSource. I'm the first I give them the history lesson. So we're seeing probably 5 or 6 a month, and we're the small company here among these guys, but we're hiring. We're all we're in a growth mode right now in our country, and whether you see that big picture and argue the politics or not, I don't care. The fact is that there's a lot of good things happening in the technology space, but let me tell you, there's a lot of great things happening in the upstate of South Carolina, and so we are very pleased to be here. We spend a lot of our time. We do hire a lot of Clemson grads. I'm told about 10% of the people at our Greenville office are Clemson graduates, and so we do spend a lot of time in that regard. So we're in a growth mode as well.
Awesome. Jim?
Very good. Well, I can't speak to the local specific area, but I do know that Charter on the whole is always looking for highly talented people in a variety of capacities. We're a large organization. We spread across the country, and we have definitely some growth opportunities within the organization, and particularly within the Charter business side.
Awesome. I think these guys did a fabulous job, don't you?